You are experiencing the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.
It is September 18th, 2024, and welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we're bringing you the people and the organizations fighting for liberty around the country and in your region. Today, we have a special episode. We are going to be talking with Amy Bohn of PERK Group, and that is actually a group that's out there defending the educational rights of kids, and actually a little bit more than that too, as we're going to find out throughout the show. But before we get into that, let me introduce you to the rest of our panel. In our lower left-hand corner, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. In our lower right-hand corner, we have our special guest, Amy Bohn. She is the president and co-founder of PERK Group. And my name is Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host today. So just to give you a little bit of a rundown on some of what we'll be covering. So we will be talking with Amy about her organization. Then we're going to actually talk about a legal case that is coming up in November. So that's a really interesting thing about, in this case, it's actually the way the government school system cracked down on some teachers. And so we'll get into that. And then finally, we have sort of a knucklehead noise patrol where we'll hear about a kind of a little fact check that some soldiers did on Kamala Harris recently. But before we get into any of that, we always start our show with a Liberty quote of the day. And this time we actually have John Locke. So that's the first time we've had a quote from him on the show, and it's long overdue. But I felt like this one it was kind of relevant to what we're going to be talking about because it has to do a little bit with bodily autonomy. And so the quote is, every man has a property in his own person. This nobody has any right to but himself. The labor of his body and the work of his hands, we may say, are properly his. And so, this is back in the days of, I guess, the Enlightenment and, early thought on classical liberalism. In fact, some people call John Locke the father of classical liberalism. And in what he's doing here is he's kind of establishing the idea that a lot of libertarians can appreciate, and that's self-ownership. I mean, that's sort of where it all starts with, the idea that you own your own body. And so that's kind of what I'm taking from that. And I think we're going to see that has some applicability later to the case we're going to talk about too. But do you guys have any thoughts on this quote? Because I think it's a pretty strong quote.
Amy, you can go ahead.
Thank you. Well, first, by the way, thank you for having me on. And my name is pronounced Amy Bohn.
Oh, Bohn. Sorry.
So since we're talking about body sovereignty and our, ownership of ourselves, I figure I'd just let you know.
Name sovereignty. There you go.
Amy, if I may interrupt you for just a little bit. I have known Jason for over 10 years now, and you still butcher my last name, okay? So, don't feel left out here. Don't feel left out.
It may take you coming back on the show a few times before I get it right as well, Leon.
You know what? Here's the good news, Leon. I'm from Arkansas, so I can't say any of your name at all. So Jason's in good company. I could know you for 20 years, and I won't be able to pronounce your name or read or write, for that matter, or do math. But then I'll just be like California. So, yeah.
Looks like we have our Screaming Eagle of Freedom joining us too, a little bit late, but
I'm late.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Amy, what were you saying about the quote? Or
yeah, so really, okay. I mean, I love this quote. I actually have never heard this before, and in light of everything that's going on across the entire world, not just in California, not just in the United States, our body is our own. And if we don't have bodily sovereignty to be able to choose what goes in and out of our own body, we're a slave to whoever is making that choice for us. And so, I mean, I love this. It's ours. I think that all throughout the history of time, I think you see different junctures where anytime there's tyrannical, empires or tyranny that's on the move, dictators, they're always trying to control people's bodies as well. It's not just about controlling their rights or freedom of speech or, pick one of those fundamental rights that people have. It's also always connected to their body as well, where, they're trying to control, medical treatments, or you can see that happening in World War II as well, where they're experimenting on people. So I love that. That was a great, really, really good quote. That's the mood.
I'm sorry. Are you finished, Amy? I'm sorry.
Oh, it's your turn, Leon.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. So, like Amy, I do love the quote. I think it really encapsulates our freedom and our rights, our sovereignty to our own bodies, our ownership of ourselves. The only thing I wonder, and which I think John Locke never addressed, when does this sovereignty begin? Does it begin at conception or does it begin at birth? I would like to know the answer for that, but I do love the quote.
It's a very deep thought, Leon. It's probably a place we're probably not going to have enough time to go through all of the implications of that on this show, but it's definitely one we've kicked around a lot on this show before, the idea of abortion and when does a person own themselves, but also too, I mean, even up to the age of 18, and maybe that comes into play on some of the other stuff your organization does too as well, Amy, because you guys are looking at kids' rights, I mean, too, and who speaks for the children, so this is certainly an issue, but
yeah, I would actually say on that point, Jason, that because PERK's mission, our core mission is to protect parental rights, protect children, and medical freedom. And what's been interesting is all of those things intertwine. So you would think, what does educational rights or children's rights have to do with medical freedom and parental rights? But it's all connected to all three of those. So medical freedom is being attacked with, doctors aren't able to, even be able to give treatments to people. They're being censored in order to have, the doctor-patient relationship is under attack these days. And then freedom of speech and, all these things, but they're all connected to health freedom right now, and parental rights. So yeah, we see a lot of these issues with parents too, where the schools are trying to kick, children out of school, and all based on medical treatments, which is very discriminatory at the heart of that. But then they're also trying to, in California, they're trying to force treatments on children and remove parental rights completely, and where there's no consent. And that's not just about vaccines, but it's also about any kind of, transitioning of minors and surgeries and hormone blockers too, that can be given to children behind their parents' back. So I think that's a perfect quote to really set the stage on all of these issues, and they're all intertwined.
Mm-hmm. Tim, did you have any thoughts before we jump into talking about the PERK organization?
Well, hi, Amy. Number one. Number two is I would have thoughts, but I'm being interrupted by my cats who are hungry, waiting for Susan to come home with kitty food. They seem to think that they have sovereignty over their bodies and are right now complaining. So, I guess I'm going to have to leave everything to Amy and Leon on that.
Okay. Well, let's dive into the PERK group then, and find out what this organization is about. Because I got to say, I met Amy at Freedom Fest when we were going around looking at the tables in the exhibition room and trying to interview people there. And actually, we still haven't put that show out, but we're planning to very soon. We have editing backlog here, but hopefully we'll take care of that soon. But that said, I was been very impressed about what I've seen in this organization and looking through the website and the resources that you guys, have accumulated in probably a fairly short time. So, Amy, do you want to tell us a little bit about what PERK does and how long have you guys been doing it?
Yeah, I would love to. And let us know about the Freedom Fest interview when that comes out.
Okay.
Thanksgiving, Christmas? No.
I'm hoping within before the election. Our editor
more by then, right?
Well,
no.
our editor is only being paid in good vibes, so.
And he's doing it for the joy of it.
We all start somewhere, right? It's funny.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, right before we started PERK for several years, I actually am a chocolatier. So I make chocolate. I had my own chocolate company, had done that for many, many years. And we moved to California in 2018. My husband's from California. I'm originally from Arkansas. And when we got here, it was just a totally different California than the place my husband grew up. He was in the San Francisco Bay Area. And it was like people talk about it being a culture shock to move to the South, Arkansas or any of the southern states. But I'm telling you, it was a culture shock to move to California because of how much pressure and how many parental rights they were trying to remove and what they were doing to children. And so that was the beginnings. And I'm sharing that because that was the very beginning of PERK, of the ideas of PERK, because my heart was already being drawn to do something about what was happening in California. They had this law called SB 276 that was going to remove children from school if they had medical exemptions, and they were going to pretty much remove all of these medical exemptions from children that needed them. And so that put me in a place where I kind of looked at my 3 kids and thought, you know what? I got to do something. I can't sleep at night if I don't fight for them on this, these issues. And what kind of parent am I if I'm just complacent and do nothing? So that began the journey where I went up to the Capitol in Sacramento. It had no idea what I was doing, no idea how to oppose bills or even talk to legislators. And I share that because that's how we started PERK. A bunch of us as moms met at the Capitol in Sacramento. Some of us were neighbors, and we came together and decided enough was enough with what was happening in California. We put PERK together, and before we knew it, we were a Facebook group. And then from there, that was in 2019, we grew into a really amazing nonprofit. We started our nonprofit officially in 2020, right in time for a lockdown. Right on schedule. And that was the beginnings, and really at the heart of not only the beginning of PERK, but as we grew, it just became so apparent that there is something very serious happening across the entire country. And California is where everything starts. California is the state where they often try to take away parental rights in an extreme way, try to force things on children at schools without parental consent. They try to force these terrible vaccine policies or extreme mandates and lockdowns. They do that here first. We were the first state, as Governor Newsom brags, to lock down. We were the first schools to close and the last schools to open during that time in that era. And so PERK really became what you see today. We grew into this amazing, amazing organization that's had a tremendous impact in California. And as we've had impact in California, it's impacted the entire country. So our core mission, as I said earlier, is to protect children's rights, to protect children's right to an education, to protect bodily autonomy and health freedom and parental rights. And that's the center of everything that we do. And we built these amazing strategies over time that we figured out how to make this work. Because California, I mean, as you guys know, that it's one of the most hostile environments, and especially politically. It's very hard to move the needle here. You may, have all the people in the world go up to the Capitol, but a lot of times legislators don't listen or they vote party line. So forgetting about the party itself, but the issue is these issues get just, fall on the wayside. They don't get addressed. And so what we started to learn is we have to figure out how to transcend political parties, party lines it doesn't matter. And so we started to really build these strategies where legislation has been a key, one of the 5 keys to PERK in our success, where we, watch for policies, make sure that we're teaching people what's happening, and, have calls to action, all kinds of information about good policies, good legislation, and bad. So we're on the tip of the spear, on top of that. So that's legislation. Second, we have litigation. We've filed lawsuits and making sure that if policies pass that shouldn't, or schools are doing things that they shouldn't, or whatever's going on that are, undermining people's rights, parental rights, medical freedom, children, then we have filed lawsuits and been successful in winning those lawsuits as well. Third, we use advocacy. So just
and real quick, Amy, before you go on too much farther, I wanted to tell our invisible hand, can you bring up the visual so that we can kind of show people on your webpage? Because you talked about lawsuits.
Yes.
And here's a place where you can go and see what it is they're involved in right now. In fact, we're going to be talking about this case a little bit later in the show.
Yes, thanks for showing that, the visual. Yeah, so litigation. So that's another one of our elements. And then advocacy. We understand that sometimes we need to be the ones to go advocate for people on these issues up at the Capitol or with faith leaders or kind of you name it. And then we also teach people how to advocate for themselves. So that's where you'll see a lot of resources that we have that teach parents how to opt out of curriculums or how to, talk to their legislator. We show people how to do what we're doing so that it leads to our fourth pillar of impact, which is action. Because all the problems and things that we could talk about endlessly, that's nice, but it actually doesn't do anything if we leave it there and don't try to solve the problem. So we try to solve the problem through action and making sure people know what to do about it, what they can do about it. And then fifth, our last pillar of how we have really built PERK is education. So not just K through 12 or, grade school education, but educating people in a way that helps them understand these issues, brings awareness to it, and also use a lot of credible facts and links and sources so that whatever we put out there, people really can't dispute. It's perfect information that's people can source themselves based on what we're sharing. So we really use those main areas, and our impact with those 5 strategies has been tremendous. We were able to stop like 10 terrible bills in California in 2022. We had a coalition of leaders and other organizations. PERK was at the Capitol all the time. And we stopped these just 1984 on steroids. We were able to stop all those bills from happening and taking hold and passing in California. So that was 2022. Another one in 2023, they had a lot of legislation that would remove parental rights and even remove custody from parents. If parents did not affirm, basically the gender affirming issue. So that one, we were able to speak with the governor's staff and, just keep making a difference and then help millions of actions be moved to legislators and policymakers through our action tools and things. And I mean, it's just been such an amazing opportunity to work in PERK and be able to, take our passion for this and just apply it in California and know it's having such a high impact for the people here and impacting millions of children. So it's been amazing.
So, Amy,
real quickly, on one thing I just wanted to point out that I thought was awesome about your story is, and this is one thing we try and, I guess, reach people with who are listening, is that what can you do in your neighborhood? And you guys are showing that. I mean, you guys have started up. It's been about 4 years now, 5 years, and you guys have come an amazing way. That you guys are defending people in lawsuits. You guys have resources out there to help other people defend their rights. So when people are wondering what they can do, I mean, this is a great example of people getting together and organizing and figuring out what they can do. So, anyways, sorry, Leon, go ahead.
No, it's no problem. So, Amy, I know you said that you guys try to transcend political parties.
Yes.
But, I mean, this is an election season. Do you all endorse candidates?
So because we're a 501c3, we don't endorse candidates. So we do not. But I know, like, what we encourage people to do is really take these core issues like the mission of PERK and see which candidates are most aligned with protecting children, medical freedom, protecting their parental rights. And we try to help people understand, like, vote, make sure you're out there to vote, first of all. And second of all, find leaders that are like-minded. And some of the people that have worked with PERK and volunteered and we've, done lawsuits with them, they actually are running for office now. So it's pretty amazing. But yeah, I wish we could endorse, but we don't.
You don't? Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Are you running for office?
Apart from that, then, what about school choice? Do you all get involved with the actual school choice? Is that part of your organization?
Actually, we are going to be getting involved with school choice. So there's a ballot initiative that will likely be in 2026. And we've been approached by people that are running that ballot initiative to help them get that ballot initiative passed. So yeah, we'll probably be very involved with that on the next election cycle.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, so Amy, it sounds like it's a really great thing that you came here. I guess you imported some liberty into the state. That's when you arrived. But one of the things I always like to ask our guests too is sort of what was it that sort of woke you up to these ideas of liberty? Because one of the things we see, and when Leon talks about the public schools and school choice and all that, is when the government runs schools, usually you're learning about government solutions to problems and not really empowering yourself to go out and solve these things. So what was it that sort of rang your bell for liberty? Because for us, it wasn't the public school for most of us.
Yeah, that's a good point there. I mean, for me, I think there's kind of two things, I guess. So one, my family, my dad is a veteran of the Vietnam War. So my grandfather served this country, served with multiple presidents of the United States. My father-in-law, is a veteran. So I feel like there's like a lot of, warriors kind of in my family that go back, generations to serving this country. So there's that. But what really kind of woke me up, I would say, is honestly, it was moving to California. We moved to California from Texas at the time. So what's funny is I know like everybody's going to Texas from California these days. And it's like, why would you even come to California? But coming here, I didn't know. I'm totally being honest. I did not know they were taking away religious rights here and children's rights and parental rights. I didn't know. In Texas, everything was easy. It was fine. I had everything. I was, full-time mom with my kids, and there just wasn't any reason that I had to stand up and fight for it, because I think honestly, I was a little bit complacent, like all is well here. And moving to California, that awakened in me this great need that exists. And I wasn't aware of it because I wasn't paying attention. And I think that's really what woke me up, is coming here. And because it's almost like you're experiencing your rights being taken away for the first time. And, I know sometimes people that come here from other countries that have had, experiences with communism or socialism or, war, they come to America and sometimes they're looking at us going, why aren't you awake? What is wrong with you Americans that you're not seeing the pattern that leads to tyranny or to totalitarianism or all that? And they're like watching things happening now in our country and saying this is exactly the path that their country took. But I think the issue with that is they have that experience. They have seen that firsthand, what it looks like to have their rights taken away systematically and lead to war and to big things. And they've had to fight for it literally on the streets. And so I think that's what did it. It was that California at the time was going to take away my children's right to an education. They were going to remove my religious rights and my personal beliefs by saying my kids couldn't go to school for that. And they also were trying to say that if my children had medical reasons why they couldn't take vaccines, that they also would be discriminated against and not be able to go to parks or schools or any of these types of places. So I think it was that. It's like being in that moment, I had a choice to make. I could leave the state. My husband and I could have said, you know what? Screw California, forget this. This state sucks, and they're doing all this stuff that's terrible, taking away people's rights, which is true. They are doing that. But instead of leaving, I was on fire. I'm like, this cannot be happening to my children. And then I realized this. If it's happening to my children, it's happening to all the children in California. And not just a few thousand. It's going to be happening to millions of children. And even if this issue of 2019, which is the thing that woke me up, is the issue I care about right now, I had foresight that it would be something different in 2020 or 2021 or 2022, because if the state is allowed to take away one group of people's rights, then you can bet $1 million they're going to take away other people's rights as well. It was just with a different topic, a couple of years later. So that's what did it for me. It's seeing that our rights were being taken away. And I'm just like, nope, I'm going to fight for this, going to fight hard. And not just fight against those that are doing that, but fight for something, which is fighting for my family, fighting for the children, fighting for freedom, fighting for our faith and our country. At this point, it's fighting for the fact that freedom is everything. So that's what woke me up.
So are you saying that we Americans have become too complacent and take too many things for granted?
Yes. Yes. I think that not only are we complacent and taking things for granted, but I don't think that people realize how significant this election is. I really genuinely believe that with the lockdown and everything that just happened over the past 4 years, like going into this election, I'm not, I as a nonprofit, I'm not supposed to be political. So I'm going to stay in the space of not being political. I'm just going to tell you what I really think. I think that there is a coup that just happened where without a single vote, one of the parties has a nominee for president who is there on the ticket. Nobody voted for her to be there. Nobody put her there, that she just automatically is there based on them having Biden step out. And to me, that should wake up every single American that there is something wrong here. There is something going on way bigger than just a presidential election. Who is in control of what just happened? Who is in control of putting someone in a position that could be possibly the United States president? And that should wake up every person if they have, forget about the political party, forget about right, left, and all that. Just pay attention to that one thing. And then I would say, follow the money. Like, don't be so complacent that we listen to the mainstream media that's repeating this propaganda over and over and over again about whether it's about wars or lockdowns or vaccines or pharmaceutical things. Like, they have a machine that is distributing information to people. And if people are complacent, which I think they are going to be asleep to what is happening. And complacency is also just silently not doing anything. What if people are awake about it and just not doing anything? To me, we all have a responsibility right now. Anyways, I have a lot to say about that one.
Well, we are coming up near the break, but I think a perfect example of being asleep is, and this kind of segue into us talking about the case that you guys are defending too, but is what happened with the lockdowns, the idea of 2 weeks to stop the spread, and how, I guess, uncritical so many of us were in sort of going along with it, and then sort of finding out that most of the things we were told at the time, they weren't living up to. I mean, I know with the kids in the schools, they told the kids, hey, you're going home for a day. Oh, you're going home for a few days. Oh, don't come back for a week or two. It's 2 weeks to stop the spread. And don't come back this year. That's what it was in California. And then you argued the next year about whether you were coming back or not. And it just, it's too awful. But anyways, if you are watching us on public access, you're going to have to watch the rest of the show online. So come check it out there. And we're going to talk about this case of defending teachers who essentially were refusing to take this not very well tested vaccine at the time that a lot of us had a little bit of skepticism over. So we're going to get into that, but check us out online and you can catch the whole episode. So Amy, getting back to the case, James, maybe you could bring it up. It's Arnold versus Bauer, and it's a Granada Hills charter school is what it was. And there were 7 teachers who were skeptical about the vaccine. And, I actually wanted to show just a little clip to lay the foundation because, our memories might be slipping at this point. It's been like 3 years, and I just want to kind of refresh people about what some of the chaos was that was going on at that time when they were trying to force this vaccine on people in, I guess it was early 2021 or late 2020, when they sort of miraculously had it up. So James, it's KOL 1. Can you play that?
From coast to coast, the battle over when and how to reopen schools is heating up as vaccines slowly roll out and COVID cases continue to surge. In San Francisco, the city sued its own school board to force it to develop a reopening plan. In Chicago, one educator is teaching remotely from outside of his classroom to limit his family's exposure. And in Wake County, North Carolina, the school district calling for substitute teachers ahead of its planned reopening. The American Federation of Teachers says widespread testing is key to reopening safely, as has been the case in places like Colorado. This, as a new CDC report says it's safe to reopen schools after months of COVID closures, with or without vaccinating teachers. But teachers and teachers' unions are pushing back, saying the vaccine isn't the only piece of the puzzle. Vaccinating teachers is a major sticking point in the fight over reopening in places like Chicago and California. In fact, California's governor said today that schools can safely reopen in the state with mitigation efforts even before teachers are fully vaccinated. But some unions in the state have said those vaccines for teachers must be prioritized before kids can return to the classroom.
And one piece I wanted to just focus everybody on is that the CDC, they said in that news report, said that you could open schools without vaccinating all the teachers.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was an important point there. But clearly there was a lot of argument and discussion. So that kind of lays the foundation. So Amy, did you want to start to tell us a little bit about this? And Jane, maybe you could bring up the visual here. So so it's Arnold versus Bauer. This is the press release that you guys put out. So.
Yeah, I would love to. And that's a great video to remind us of what was happening too. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so here's what's happening with this case. In 2021, these amazing educators, most of them were teachers. There was one that was a staffer, an educator at the school as well. And these teachers were amazing, reputation, great with the kids. One of them had been there for, 15 years. I mean, math teachers, like these were just your favorite teachers at the school, highly credentialed, doing an amazing job with these kids. And lo and behold, a mandate gets rolled out from the state of California on the teachers across the entire state, which we believe was coming also probably from the teachers union, maybe, I don't know. But at the end of the day, the charter school basically denied these teachers religious exemptions, medical exemptions related to taking the COVID shot, and they were terminated. They were literally terminated for not taking the COVID shot. And nothing about credentials, great teachers. Go ahead, Jason.
Well, Amy, we do have a little video clip. It's one I've edited down, but it'll kind of show you the actual school and one of the plaintiffs in this case, I believe. So, James, can you play KOL 2?
I was formally terminated.
Iris Arnold says she lost her teaching job at Granada Hills Charter High School for not getting the COVID-19 vaccine after 15 years here. She's one of 7 employees now launching a lawsuit claiming they were the first to be fired for not getting the shot.
Why not get the vaccine?
For myself, I also have medical concerns and, personal medical concerns. And then, also I have personal belief.
Although Granada High is a charter school, it does fall under LAUSD's jurisdiction for the vaccine mandate. Administrators have said the vaccine mandate is in place to protect everyone on each campus. Granada Hills Charter said these staffers lost their jobs after confirming they would not get the vaccine. The school released a statement that reads in part, "Our actions in this regard were guided first and foremost by what is lawful and in the best interests of preserving the health and safety of its students, employees, and the surrounding community."
My license is now in jeopardy, and future employment opportunities are now at stake.
We know at least one of the board members here at the charter school resigned in protest before the vote to fire these now former employees happened.
I thought that last part about one of the board members had at least a little bit of courage to stand up and at least, step down instead of firing these people. But anyways, I hopefully that kind of characterizes it. Amy, do you think that sort of sets the stage well for this?
Yeah, I mean, that was a great video to show. Yeah, we believe they were the first teachers fired in the entire country for not taking the COVID vaccine. And if you listen to their story, like from the video, they were blacklisted after being fired. Some of them for a time couldn't get unemployment. I mean, they literally, the school didn't just wrongfully fire these teachers or terminate them. They trampled on their religious rights. They trampled on their medical rights. They did it while also afterwards, after firing them, trying to affect their credentials and they're, blacklisting them as if they couldn't, to stop them from getting a future job as a teacher. This wasn't just about not taking the COVID shot. This was about trying to make an example of those teachers to other staff, in my opinion, to other staffers and other teachers. And I think that the bigger issue is not just the school, the charter school, but LAUSD tried to roll out this mandate across their entire district that impacted children, which we fought back on and won, which impacted other teachers, which were fired as well. I mean, this whole thing, I couldn't help myself. I had to just shake my head at that last quote on the news story where they're like, well, we did this because of public safety and this or that. there is never a time in our country's constitution where mandates belong. There just aren't. Like, having mandates that trample religious freedom and everything that our forefathers set this country up to be, with the Constitution as the guide. If you look back in history to the time of our country's founding, I can't remember which one of the diseases was happening at the time. Maybe you guys would remember, but like, there were a lot of health issues. There were a lot of epidemics at the time. There were a lot of diseases going around, and the Constitution doesn't say, hey, you know what? You can have freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the exercise thereof only in the event that there isn't, there's no exceptions to that. So these teachers are amazing. The case itself is really significant because here's why. Now, fast forward to 2024. The case is set to go to trial in front of a jury, and it will be one of the first, maybe not the first, but one of the first COVID-related cases to go before a jury trial. And here's what's at stake here. When we win, I'm going to put that out there because we're going to win. When we win, this sets precedent for religious issues in not only the state of California, but across the country. It also is super important related to employment rights and employment issues, that you can't discriminate against your employees. It's super important related to just, like all these things: bodily sovereignty, medical freedom, the right to be able to choose what goes into our own body without coercion and mandates and penalties and discipline. I mean, this is so significant for us to have this huge win with these teachers as these plaintiffs. So, by the way, if we win, this is a case for damages as well. And the attorneys are projecting, and we've put this out there publicly, that it's a multi-million-dollar, damages case that these teachers would be rewarded. So it is a really, really, really big deal. It's a big case. The timing of it, this is what's interesting. It's 2024 and mandates have rolled back, right, overall. But I think, kind of to Leon, to your question about complacency, I think people are getting a little bit complacent again because we're not in the middle of a lockdown right now, Mm-hmm. So this is like, these are the moments where we need to win this because it matters for next year and the year after, and whenever the next thing happens where they try to take away our rights. So it's incredibly important case. And and I have to say this: whenever these teachers came forward to be part of this lawsuit and were willing to fight back against the school and on this issue and for this issue, it takes so much courage for people to be a plaintiff in a lawsuit. Their names are out there now and have been for years. They have to go through the emotional, just what they've been carrying about this. They have been really, really hurt by what's happened over the past several years. They were blacklisted, they were fired. I mean, all of these things, these teachers are courageous to do what they did to be a part of this lawsuit. So I'm just so proud of them and so honored that PERK was able to be that organization to work with them on this in a partnership. So that's what's happening with the case. I mean, is
this a federal case?
Is this what?
Is it federal?
It is that's a great question. I believe it's a state case. I think we sued, or maybe you can see it on my lawsuit, my PR, my press release.
Oh, I will look at it. Okay.
Yeah. Double check. I think it's a state case. I think we did it in the state court. I'm pretty sure we did.
Yeah. Not 100% sure. I think this would probably be a state thing, though.
But it seems like
Los Angeles Superior Court case. So
Los Angeles Superior Court. Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I mean, it matters. I think people forget that whenever we're winning in any one of these spaces, whether it's legislation or litigation or just public awareness and action, these issues take all of that, this multi-pronged strategy, and we just can't be complacent. I cannot begin to emphasize that enough. If we're complacent about these things, then we don't have freedom. We have no bodily autonomy or sovereignty. We have none if people are complacent, because they're going to just take away those rights. It's up to us, we the people, to stand in the space and make sure that they don't. that's what we're called to do, my opinion.
Well, it does seem like in this particular case, it was teachers standing up for their own rights of bodily autonomy. But there's been cases around the country during this time when some teachers were standing up for kids' rights too. There was I remember there was a coach somewhere in I think one of the southeastern states, and he had track kids. I think I saw a story about a girl runner, and they made them wear masks while they were running track. And I mean, you saw the girl pass out, on camera in this one thing. I mean, so some of the crazy things, and this guy said, I'm not going to have my kids do it. And I think they fired him for it. So, I mean, this is just insanity, some of the stuff that was happening. And it really, there were some cases of bravery out there where some people lost their jobs, standing up to this nonsense.
You're right. You're right. I would add too, another thing that PERK was involved with too, related to the kids and the mandates, with LAUSD specifically, we were able to bring another lawsuit on behalf of the children against LAUSD for trying to mandate the COVID vaccine on all the kids. And we partnered with another organization at the time that's no longer here, but LAUSD was trying to kick out 35,000 children from the school into independent study, and those children had not taken the COVID shot. So well done to the parents, but the fact that the school is going to just kick them out of in-person learning, that's unconstitutional in the state of California. I mean, it's so wrong on so many levels, but our lawsuit was able to push back against all of that, and they weren't able to kick those kids out. So anyways, that was a great victory and win for children.
You know what? This is a little bit out of order, but I had a video that if we got to it, I was going to show it on some of the mask nonsense. But what you just brought up, this actually touched on that. And there was a little clip in there that showed the abuse some of these kids were taking. Daily Wire put together a video when the Super Bowl came out in 2022. And there were mask mandates in the schools where the kids had to wear masks. And also not just for the schools, but for lots of public venues too, like stadiums, like sports stadiums, that all these people were at the Super Bowl. Now there's the video is about 3 or 4 minutes, but I clipped it down to just a little over a minute. But I think it's instructive here to see the hypocrisy that was going on with the people who were in charge and the abuse that kids were getting, during this time. James, could you play KOL number 7?
Put your mask on. There you go. Keep it right there.
We're in Hollywood. Who do we got here? We got Jay-Z.
Masks are just soaking wet because they're sucking on them all day. There's lots of goop under there.
Damon? Release Theron is here. LeBron. Magic Johnson.
I'm used to criticism as a public figure. I've been wearing the mask the entire game long. People want a picture, I hold my breath. Zero risk.
Police were called on campus. The entire school went into lockdown, and all because 2 students refused to wear a mask.
Here because we got kicked out of class for not wearing a mask and protecting our rights. We came to class with no mask on. They kicked us out. We were sitting outside at the office, and then we got kicked out of the office. And then once we got kicked out of the office, they said to go sit outside by the curb, and that's where we got.
So you see there, I mean, my God, that last group of kids, they kicked them out of the school with no supervision because they weren't wearing masks. At the same time, you've got all these celebrities and politicians. That was Mayor, not Gil Garcetti, but
Eric
Garcetti. Just flaunting the idea of wearing masks. These are the guys who put these mandates in place. In fact, Governor Newsom, we don't have the picture of him here, but he was also taking a picture with Magic Johnson at one of the playoff games as well, not wearing a mask, smiling while forcing all these mask rules on everybody else. So I just,
it makes me so mad. I got to be honest, like seeing that again, because we all lived it. But, this was child abuse. I mean, like, can we just say what it really was and is? And we still see children sometimes at the grocery store, like 2-year-olds and like young children that are in masks. Like, where is the like the outcry that children lost words, literally their language, to be able to see, mouths and be able to read lips as they learn at early ages to learn just how to talk? What about the children with special needs who were not able to even understand why they're forced to have something on their face for not just 1 minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes? We're talking about hours and hours and hours that children were forced to wear masks at school, and all of the academic loss. I mean, you're right. The hypocrisy is just, there's no words for it. It's just like, have you heard that saying? Have you guys heard that saying? Rules for thee, but not for me.
Yeah, oh yes. Oh yes.
Yeah.
This is that. It's like, oh yeah, you peasants out there, you guys have to wear the mask, and the children and the babies, we'll go ahead and put masks on all of them because they can't make us take it off of them. And the rest of us, we'll tell you to wear a mask, but we won't really wear a mask.
But one of the things I thought was the craziest thing about all this, and it exposed, I guess, some of our lack of critical thinking about what science is and everything else like that through this. But we were told that constantly the reason we were being forced to do all these things was the science, right? And you couldn't say anything against it, because if you used your own critical thinking skills, or as Jimmy Dore likes to say, doing his own research. Like, you mean reading? I'm not supposed to read about any of this stuff. But, here's a perfect example, because I remember the airports during this time. And James, maybe you could bring up the visual here. This is just a meme from the internet, but it says it all, just the craziness, what was going on. I mean, here in the upper part, they show people being spaced 6 feet apart, who are all then going to be forced to sit next to each other once they get on the airplane. And it's just like, is there any thinking going on? It's just, the lack of critical thinking is just astounding. And these are all people who are claiming it's the science, almost like it's some kind of a religion, a secular religion of some sort. Anyways.
Well, I think it speaks to a quite larger problem, though, which is that I think the government, especially the federal government, and maybe California is no different. The California government is no different. They think, the federal government and the state government in our case, they think we are their subjects, and they are no longer our servants. They're supposed to be serving the people, serving us. But that's not what they think their role is now. So we have gone, through our complacency, we have gone from being citizens with all our rights to being subjects of these people who call themselves the government. And they are clearly forgetting that Constitution is a contract between the government and the governed. So that's what the larger problem is here.
I think that's so true, Leon. I can't remember the quote exactly, but there's a quote out there about fearing the government, like when the government, when it's something about how the people realize their power. Is that one? Is it? Read it.
Yes, this is Thomas Jefferson. When the people fear the government, there is tyranny.
That's it.
When the government fears the people, there is liberty.
That's the one. That's one of my favorites. But that's the point, is we the people, they do work for us. They are supposed to represent us. And you're right. They're forgetting that and acting like they're dictators, or they're the ones, that are in charge, and we're their servants. You're right, Leon.
Yes.
It's true. True.
One of the things I also wanted to touch on, and this was with regards to the vaccines, but I guess what was the role of the teachers' unions in all of this? Because here we see this one story where the CDC director said that the schools could safely open without vaccinating the teachers. And this is something that she said. And then there was pushback from the unions on this. And to the point where Jen Psaki actually, who used to be the White House press secretary under Biden, she actually came out and literally contradicted the the CDC director. And James, maybe you could play this clip. It's KOL 3. It's a short little clip, but it literally shows her saying that whatever the CDC director said, it was just on her own time and not the official word. So maybe you could play this.
The head of the CDC, as you know, said that it was safe to reopen schools without vaccinating teachers. You said that the White House was still waiting for the official guidance before making a final determination. Why isn't what the director of the CDC says, why isn't that enough?
Well, first, the director of the CDC also has said they haven't issued their final guidance, and we, of course, wait for that process to complete and see its way through. As she would say as well, I believe she did an interview last night where she spoke to this issue again. The president, let me be crystal clear, wants schools to open. He wants them to stay open, and he wants to do that safely. And he wants health and medical experts to be the guides for how we should do exactly that. So we're just not. Dr. Walensky spoke to this in her personal capacity. Obviously, she's the head of the CDC, but we're going to wait for the final guidance to come out so we can use that as a guide for schools around the country.
I mean, it's hard to put into place how, if you're maybe a teacher and you're watching this, what are you supposed to think? If you literally are thinking about the science and the CDC director says one thing, and then suddenly a politician countermands what the CDC director is saying, and then suddenly the CDC director changes course, what is that supposed to make you think? Jane, maybe you could bring up the visual. There was this is from a press release in 2022 where it talks about a House investigation reveals Biden's CDC bypassed the scientific norms to allow teachers union to rewrite official guidance. And so what we actually saw here is that the teachers union was going to essentially to their friends in the White House and saying, hey, we want to influence this policy. And then you literally saw the science change based upon what was happening. And we also saw some other kind of crazy demands as well from the teachers union. The LA teachers union was literally saying they wouldn't come back to school unless you defunded the police or capped charter schools as part of a reopening plan. Now, what do those have to do with the science, right? It's just, the reason I'm bringing these up is because our liberty was fully assaulted, and it was all under the guise of the science. And yet, clearly, there were actors in here who had nothing to do with the science. So, yeah.
Yeah, well said, Jason. And I will add the defund the police point that you mentioned. See, this shows there's a bigger agenda. It wasn't about the science. It wasn't about COVID. It wasn't about these things. Those were all the front for them to push forward all of these things to try to control the people. So on the defund the police, and a lot of people probably don't really realize this, but there was a bill in California that was introduced in 2022, and it was set up to remove the funding from law enforcement, from the sheriff department, and move it to the health department. This is just another way to defund the sheriff department. Notice that. If the sheriff department didn't enforce the health department's orders, they would potentially lose their funding and it be moved to the health department. So we actually were one of the organizations that significantly contributed to making sure that bill died and did not get passed. But I think what you said about the teacher unions, and that's so true. In California, we saw some examples of just in Ventura County, kind of where we're at over here, where 7 of the school districts were, there was a letter that came out from the teacher unions, and it was all about negotiating these strict terms for reopening. They didn't care about the children. They weren't thinking for 1 minute of what kind of harm keeping the schools closed for 1 month or 1 year would do to the children. If they did think about the kids, schools would have never closed. That would have never been a thing, but they weren't thinking about the children. They had special interest in this, and they were negotiating terms, and they were part of the ones in charge of the school staying closed for so long and trying to strong arm the different school districts throughout the entire state, from the state all the way down to all the counties. So we saw that firsthand. We heard it from different school districts, teachers, what was happening, and that is what happened.
Well, Amy, did the teachers union do anything to help defend your seven plaintiffs?
No. In fact, not only did the teacher unions not help, with these plaintiffs, but the other unions for firefighters or police officers and other industries, actors, they didn't help their people either. Like, they're supposed to help their members. They're supposed to defend them when times like this happen. That's what their membership is for. But instead, most of the unions did the opposite. They either helped push forward these mandates and masking, testing, there was even other issues. And some of the unions we found through some of the lawsuits that we're involved in actually got kickbacks from pushing out testing and pushing out different products during this time. So they failed their people. I'm sorry, but they failed their members in their time of need. There was just a couple of exceptions, and those are the ones that worked with PERK, but the teacher unions, all of them. What are they good for unless they help in this time of need, like during the lockdown?
Indeed,
Well,
yes.
it's funny, Amy, you mentioned kickbacks, and there was another aspect to this whole thing as well that was happening at the same time, and that was with the news media as well and pushing out some of this. And there was, some of the stuff we were hearing from government organizations like the FDA, they were literally trying to push a message out that ivermectin was horse medicine, was one of the things we saw as they were trying to steer people toward the vaccine. So if people wanted to explore any alternatives, suddenly we didn't have the bodily freedom to explore things, even off label, that we were. You would think if John Locke's quote was honored there, about bodily autonomy, we should be able to do these things. But Jane, maybe you could bring up the visual here. This is literally a tweet put out from the FDA, and it said that you shouldn't take horse medicine. And I mean, this is people medicine. as Joe Rogan informed us during the whole thing, and it's just absolutely crazy, the gaslighting we saw from the media. And we actually had a visual, or a video rather, from CNN where they were gaslighting. They were trying to say that Joe Rogan, who had said, hey, I'm trying some of these alternatives, and one of them was ivermectin, prescribed to him by his doctor. And CNN just wouldn't stop going on about it being horse dewormer. James, can you play KOL number 4?
California has become the first state to guarantee free health care to all low-income immigrants. It's part of Governor Newsom's operating budget, which pledges to make all low-income adults eligible for the state's Medicaid program by 2024, regardless of their immigration status. Nationwide, low-income...
Looks like that was the wrong video. Darn it. That was supposed to be the CNN one. But I do have the... it's funny because it does have CNN's, what's that? Cuomo, Chris Cuomo talking to Don Lemon, and the two of them were going back and forth talking about how this was horse dewormer over and over again. But it's funny because you wonder why the media would be so lockstep in pushing this. Well, there's another video we have, and this is a montage that was kind of going around, but you wonder why the media might have an incentive to push a vaccine created by Pfizer. Well, here you go. Here's KOL 5. Hopefully this video is the correct one. James, got KOL 5?
No, it's not the right one. You sent the wrong ones today.
Ah, darn it. Okay, maybe it's a Pfizer conspiracy.
They've deleted all your videos.
Anyway, 4 and 5 are the wrong dates, but the rest of them were good. You must have grabbed the wrong ones when you sent them to me, Jason.
Okay. Well, anyways, this was just one of these things where it showed almost every major news organization being sponsored by Pfizer during that time, and they all had Pfizer, logos going on underneath them. So, anyways, don't have that to show, but
I have some thoughts about this. Have you guys ever talked about how much money Pfizer and the different companies made off of the COVID shot? Their profits?
I know it was phenomenal, but I don't know. I don't know the exact numbers.
Like over $40 billion.
Ouch.
$40 billion in profits. And the thing that's significant with all the conversation we're having about science and all the things from the video that you were going to show and that you prefaced, and the treatments too. This is what's significant about it. So when you have an EUA product, emergency use authorized product, which is what they did with the COVID shot. If there is a treatment available, hint, hint, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, any of these kinds of possible treatments, then they could not bring out to the public, rolling out this entire vaccine campaign to the public. They couldn't have done that. The EUA would essentially, I can't remember all the rules to it, but it's basically if there's a treatment, they can't mandate it and take it to the public, because it wasn't a licensed product. See, an EUA is an emergency use authorized product, right? It was still in clinical trials, and those trials were not done yet. The product wasn't fully licensed, meaning the vaccine. So this whole thing about misinformation, ivermectin, all this, there's a bigger issue here of what the motive is during a time like that for them to have suppressed the information, silenced doctors who are telling the truth and are really sharing the science, while also trying to stop any kind of treatment from getting to the public. I mean, it's so significant. It's like, it's propaganda. Yeah. It's not real science. That's not science.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
No, we just saw case after case. I mean, unfortunately, we'd almost have to have 5 or 6 hours to dive.
Yeah.
In fact, I just saw Jay Bhattacharya talking on a podcast the other day for 2 hours, and he didn't talk about everything. He was just scratching the surface. So that was the Stanford doctor that they tried to silence, the researcher.
Yes. I mean, we could sum it up in the fact that there was a lot of money to be made for pharmaceutical companies who were in partnership with the government and governments around the world. They were fast tracking a unlicensed product through an EUA, and that product was the COVID vaccine. They were suppressing the treatments and information from, everybody that was putting out information about all this stuff. And that's what happened across the entire world in a coordinated effort. And then on top of that, they tried to take away everybody's rights and trample on, our freedoms and our bodily sovereignty to try to force everyone to take the shot, regardless of the fact that it didn't stop transmission and all the things that were true about it. Like many of us, so many of the doctors, they were out there saying, this is not going to stop transmission. The truth was out there. It was called misinformation. And then 6 months later or 9 months later or 1 year later, it was then proven that what was being said by these doctors and experts like Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, it was true. What they were saying was true the entire time. But the government and the news stations, which I think is like the fourth arm of the government, fourth branch of the government these days, they were bought. They had an agenda, an intention that wasn't good, and it involved lots of money and control of the people. So such a crazy, I can't believe the time.
Just on a personal note, I took the 2 shots, and after that I got COVID.
Yeah, I think everybody did. But that was one of the pieces of misinformation. We don't have that video clip, but there's so many different people in the media, including the president himself, President Biden, who said, if you take this shot, you will not get COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, he literally said it. Unfortunately, I didn't bring that, but you can search for that. Just search for it on YouTube. You will find him and many others saying that. But it's just terrible. But so we're going back to your case. Is this something that you expect to set precedent, I guess, as this goes forward? Will it have broad-reaching implications throughout the nation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is what's so significant about this is it would impact any kind of future lockdown that, where they're trying to roll out an EUA product or a vaccine again and trying to force it on the people through any kind of mandate or coercion, by the way. So winning this case means that it basically is like setting up a wall in the courts for this to not happen again. I mean, can you imagine if they try to lock down again next year? I mean, frankly, in Europe right now, in France, have you guys been seeing what's going on in France and the UK, where they're actually going to people's homes who are posting supposedly misinformation about vaccines, about all this kind of stuff, and they're arresting them. So if we think this is not coming back, it is, and this case matters because it stops any of this kind of stuff from taking hold again, not only in California, but it would impact the entire country. So the precedent, I mean, this is huge. Religious freedom. It protects religious freedom because it protects medical freedom, protects medical treatments, disability. Like some people like Leland, you took the shots, but some people couldn't take the shots, literally for medical reasons they already had and already knew. And why should they be discriminated against where they can't go to work, they cannot travel, for any, would I pick anything any right that was taken away because they literally can't take any kind of vaccine, for example. That's what's at stake here is all of this. And then ultimately bodily sovereignty. I mean, at the end of the day, we all should have a choice what we put into our body.
Yeah. When you talk about what was going on in Europe too, imagine, the way that these vaccines are funded, all of the FDA money that goes into that and everything else, that's all money that comes from those companies. So they kind of steer a lot of what's happening in this, policy stuff. And, imagine that if a company is able to get in bed with the government and then, push a drug that everybody needs to take. And then suddenly, you can't even speak out against it. I just can't even imagine what kind of just a dystopia that would be.
You're right. There's a revolving door between the pharmaceutical companies and the regulatory agencies. So what we mean by that is people who work at the highest level in pharmaceutical companies are then placed in appointed positions or paid positions, whatever, in the regulatory agencies. If there is a conflict of interest, that's a conflict of interest, right? And you're right.
Well, here's one little quick snippet before we get to our Knucklehead Noise Patrol. But James, can you bring up the visual again real quick? When we talk about the FDA, and that's a government agency that's there to protect us, supposedly, they were trying to be able to shield these documents from FOIA requests for 55 years. So essentially, so that everybody would essentially be dead who took this stuff. And nobody would have standing to do anything about this if anybody had a problem with it at some point in the future. How is that looking out for the best interest of the public? The idea that you're hiding information that went into a public process of safety.
What are they hiding? What are they hiding?
True.
Why can't they release any of the clinical trials or none of that? It's because they are hiding something, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, you don't. That behavior, you don't do that. And a lot of these pharmaceutical companies that had rolled out the vaccines too, like Johnson & Johnson or Pfizer, if you look at their history, they have a criminal history of fraud, and they've had to settle cases in the billions of dollars with their other products. And they're known for, if you look at the allegations that have been settled, they're known for bringing products to market that they know will harm people, for falsifying data, for not, properly testing them. I mean, these are the very things that people are saying happened with the COVID shot, right? So we can't just be told what to think. We got to learn how to think and how to discern these kinds of situations and what's happening.
Sure. Yes.
Well, speaking of gaslighting and dishonesty and all that stuff, we're about at the point in the show where we like to wrap up with something kind of funny. And this is our Knucklehead Noise Patrol, where this time it's actually Kamala Harris recently was in a debate, and she said something that the fact checkers didn't really care, that the people who claim to be fact checkers, but it was actually a group of soldiers who fact checked her on this particular one, and I thought it was kind of an interesting one. So, James, can we show KNP number 1?
And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world the first time this century. What? But let's understand.
So where the are we right now?
So I kind of thought that was just worth showing because, we hear this gaslighting, but, it goes beyond that a little bit because these people even, came out and they said, hey, where are we if we're not in these places you say we're not? Yeah. But here we actually had, she actually had surrogates who went out there, and the media actually did start to question it after this video came out. And there was, it was this week, I guess, had a kind of a funny exchange with the governor of Massachusetts, who is a Democrat, I believe, and she was there trying to defend Kamala Harris on this point. And James, maybe you could show KNP2 that kind of sets up the question that she's asking, and then the response will be the next short video. So can you show KNP2?
She said during the debate this about the U.S. military. Let's listen.
As of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century.
Our fact checkers found that to be false, and I have a lot of experience in that area as well. There are currently 900 U.S. military personnel in Syria, 2,500 U.S. troops in Iraq. All have been under regular threat from drones and missiles for months. We also have action in the Red Sea. We also, every single day, the Navy SEALs, Delta Forces, special operators can be part of any sort of deadly raid. So why would she make that claim?
Okay, and James, so the KNP3, that's the response that we're going to hear. I didn't want to play it all because it would have been a pretty long clip otherwise.
Well, I think what's important here, Martha, is that Kamala Harris, in contrast to Donald Trump, demonstrated herself to be commander-in-chief. We are in a world where there are all sorts of conflicts, and it's all the more reason we need somebody who's serious and who supports the military. And just remember,
but Governor, excuse me, but she said there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone. That is not true. You say she demonstrated her ability to be commander-in-chief, but did she not know about these people in Syria and Iraq? Why would she say that?
Look, that was a comment. That was a comment in a debate. I think the point that she was trying to make was a broader point. And of course, we have military in place all around this country. That's important. We're the United States of America.
So apparently she doesn't address the question. She just goes on and says, why were you lying? Or why was Kamala lying? Well, because she's commander-in-chief. She's showing that she can be commander-in-chief. And then when she's called on it, she says, well, it's because we're America, and it's just a comment in a debate. Like, that doesn't matter. That's the whole reason we're listening, is to hear what the thoughts are on this stuff. Anyways, I just thought that was, yeah. You guys have any thoughts on this gaslighting?
Go ahead, Amy. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you first, Leon, because you're in California.
Oh, no, I'm just going to say, well, if this woman become commander-in-chief, God help us, okay? God help us. This woman is an idiot, okay? I'm not talking about the governor of Massachusetts, who is also an idiot. I'm talking about the one who's trying to be commander-in-chief. This woman is a complete moron. And for her to make a statement like that, that should be disqualifying as far as I'm concerned, okay? Because that is one of your main jobs as president of the United States, being commander-in-chief. And you don't know this stuff? God help us if that idiot becomes president of the United States.
Amen to that, Leon. I have nothing further to say. No. Yeah, I mean, really, honestly, you're kind of the end here is supposed to be funny and like the joke. And I almost feel like saying, like, she is the joke. Like, the point, like, the point of this joke is that, right? Because how many times, if you've really paid attention, she has made gaffes and mistakes and not been knowledgeable the way a vice president or a presidential candidate at the time when she was running way back then should be. Like, you need someone who is quick, who is knowledgeable, who knows what they're talking about, and a commander-in-chief. Oh my God, that would be the biggest joke of all.
Yeah, I think the gaslighting is international gaslighting in light of the number of troops that are internationally out there all over the place. But in addition to her not being qualified to be commander-in-chief because she either doesn't know or she deliberately knows. I mean, she should know. She's been vice president for the last 3.5 years. So if anybody should know who's wherever they are, it's her. But assuming that, also Trump has a responsibility to jump all over that. And apparently he did not. I mean, I saw the thing, I can't remember, but I don't think I do recall that he called her out on that. I mean, there was a good opportunity. So Amy's looking for quick acting commanders in chief, and I agree. That's what they should be. So I'm not liking either one. Anyway, go chase Oliver.
And how like, I mean, it was kind of funny that the military, like that video where they're like live or watching it and like, what? Like here they are in combat and their response, I think their response was pretty, it's just truth, you know?
Well, like spot on. It was spot on.
Yeah. Well, I almost felt like this is what we expected to see, from the government during COVID, the way they talked to us during COVID, like, don't believe your lying eyes. And here,
right.
here they were doing it, right there on the stage. And by the way, Donald Trump did say some things too, but he was literally fact checked a million times on stage, which they didn't bother to fact check Kamala once when clearly there were occasions. And, that was one of the reasons we were sharing this one as well. When literally soldiers have to do the fact checking, the job of journalists. So.
And those soldiers are out there sacrificing, their lives and their time and everything to protect us and to protect our country and our rights and our freedom. And how kind of insulting that would be if they're out there in the field and the potential nominee for president doesn't even realize that. And what about the governor in that clip who didn't even acknowledge the bigger issue at hand? Like, why couldn't she own, like, that was a mistake, instead of just saying, oh, I was on the debate stage and she excused it. Instead, why not own it and say, you know what, she made a mistake. You're right. There are such and such, that many people in combat, and she should have respected that and known that. That would have made that governor look way more competent, honessly.
Yeah. But just to
say, normal.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Leon.
The normal thing is to say, well, they misspoke. She couldn't even say that.
What? She couldn't say what? What did you say? I didn't hear it.
The normal thing when a politician is caught with their damn nonsense, the normal thing is for their surrogate, one of their surrogates or something, to say, oh, the vice president misspoke or something like that, right? Right? But she couldn't even say that, right? She couldn't say that, well, oh, she made a little mistake or anything like that. She couldn't say anything. Well, she was trying to defend the garbage.
Just the fact that she said it's just a comment during a debate, like, that means nothing. I mean, that's literally the chance we have to hear those ideas come back and forth.
Exactly.
And the idea that Kamala herself isn't coming out later on and correcting herself. And, to be fair, Trump said some things too that he should probably, come and at least clean up a little bit.
Yeah. That's the problem with, I think, government officials or people that are politicians. They are so out of touch with people because the people want the truth. And that's why, honestly, my favorite candidate in all of this has been Bobby Kennedy Jr. He speaks the truth, whether people agree with him or not. He completely tells in transparency what he believes, what he thinks. And a moment like that, he would have owned it. He already has been truthful. And I love his campaign and his, what he stands for. And honestly, I mean, he really, to me, he's like the epitome of what politicians aren't. And I think that's why he resonates with people across the entire country. So that was one of my thoughts.
I have to give Robert RFK Jr. a little bit of credit here, even though I never liked the Kennedys, but I have to give him a little credit here. To see him stand up against his entire family who have came out against him, and stand up against his wife, who's a B-rate actress or something like that. But he did take a good stance in some of the issues that I like. So I'm going to give him a little credit, even though he's a Kennedy, which I have a real problem with.
That's fair. I mean, that's the thing is he doesn't, that's what I really like about him, is that he has integrity and he has principles and he's a leader. A true leader doesn't say things or do things just because it's popular or just because everybody wants them to. A true leader holds true to their principles and is willing to stand alone if necessary. And that's, I'm glad you gave him a little something. I'll give him a lot. Like, fantastic.
well, like Tim, I do prefer Chase Oliver, but that said, I do think Kennedy is a cut above in being able to come out and openly address things. I mean, he's gone on so many different what do you call it, different podcasts and been to places that are hostile to his way of thinking, and that takes courage, and that's actually what we need in leaders is people who are willing to do. And to be fair, even Trump has gone to some places that are a little bit hostile. Haven't seen Kamala. So,
yeah. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. We were talking a lot about lockdown and COVID and the vaccine and like all those things. And truthfully, he broke that conversation open for the entire country with his campaign, just talking about the truth about the fraud, the science, like all the things that were being hidden from the people. Like he wrote this great book, The Real Anthony Fauci. But it's the truth. These are all people. I'm telling you, people are hungry. They are starving for the truth. And so when they're given the truth and they hear the truth and it's resonating, they want to follow those types of leaders. And I think RFK Jr. just nailed it with all the conversations that he was having. He went there in all of them. He didn't allow them to say, nope, you can't talk about that. He talks about everything that was supposed to be untouchable conversations. And now here we are. Maybe you've gotten strikes on your YouTube channel like at least 10 or 15 times, but hey, it's okay. We can talk about it now.
I do feel like the book should have been titled The Real Fake if it's about Anthony Fauci, but you could have had a better title, I guess. But as far as things wrapping up, I did want to mention that if people wanted to come to your site looking for assistance, help, or to help you guys out as well, or to join in, I guess James, can you bring up the webpage real quick? I did want to show that you guys do have a resource page, and here's exemption letter templates and stuff like that. I mean, so you guys are actually have stuff if people are concerned and they just want to get some quick help. And how do I start the process that I'm concerned about this? You guys have some different things like personal belief exemption letters. It says right to refuse, public employee resources. So I don't know if you had any last thoughts about people coming to your website and help with the cause.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Everybody can do something. So we welcome the support. People can donate to support PERK's work. It doesn't matter what state people live in. California matters for the entire country. So we don't want California's issues to come to the state near you. So support us that way. People can follow us online. We have a lot of information on our social media. So we have Twitter and Instagram. We put videos, different things out there. And then our resources. I'm so glad you stopped on that page because coming to our website, our newsletters are filled with calls to action. It's not just information. It's telling people here, this is what you can do about what's happening. And then we also give people resources. And that's part of the advocacy where they can take these resources and go do these things themselves. We teach them how to opt out of curriculum at their schools that they don't want their kids in. We teach them how to find out what curriculum's at their schools or how to make sure that they can, apply for exemptions if needed. And there's so many resources we have. So I definitely encourage people to follow us, to support us. And really, this is a movement. That's what has to happen. Parental rights, protecting children. This has got to be a movement so that we save this generation of children and we don't give them our current problems. We don't pass that along, but instead we save these kids.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm so glad you guys are out there and doing the good work of standing up to the system, and that's certainly what we need nowadays. As well too, if you're watching this, this is a great example. I mean, Amy talked about how this group started up in 2019, and it was just concerned parents getting together and figuring out how they could get some action going to, protect their kids, from some of the stuff that the state was doing. And they've evolved into this in a period of about 4 or 5 years where they're literally going out and defending people in court to set precedent. So, it's an awesome example of what you can do, if you put your mind to it, and, that anybody can get up and do this stuff. So before the next show, think about what you can do in your community. You know, if there's anything that you can do to move the ball for liberty. It may be unconventional, but hey, get together with some people who kind of have some similar concerns and just get the ball rolling and start talking about it. Because, you know, in the end, if we don't all stand up, you know, they're coming for these liberties. So that's the only way we're going to keep these liberties. So thanks so much for joining us today, Amy. And thank you out there for joining us as well. And until next time, stay tuned and stay free.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Thanks for having me.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.